Dealership lots across America have become frozen in time. Brand new cars sitting unsold for 400+ days. Interest charges piling up daily. Profit margins vanishing. And it's all tracing back to a single regulatory grenade that rolled into the middle of the auto industry, changing everything overnight. A Tampa dealership abruptly closed its doors yesterday, abandoning customers mid-purchase. 3 major dealer groups filed for bankruptcy protection last month, and industry insiders are whispering about a death spiral that could eliminate thousands of dealerships nationwide by year's end. What happened? The Federal Trade Commission's new Combating Auto Retail Scams rule stripped away the layers of mystery that dealerships relied on for decades. No more hidden fees. No more undisclosed add-ons. No more mysterious dealer prep charges. For the first time, dealers must show the actual final price up front, and the financial fallout has been catastrophic. We've got over 400 days of inventory on certain models, admits Frank, a dealership owner in Michigan, who asked we withhold his last name. That's the death nail for any dealer. We're bleeding $28 per vehicle per day in floor plan financing costs alone. Do the math, we're drowning. What mainstream financial media won't tell you is that this crisis isn't hitting all dealerships equally. While certain lots are frozen in time with cars gathering dust for over a year, others are moving vehicles so quickly they barely have time to place them on the lot. This isn't just a regulatory story, it's about which brands trusted consumers enough to play fair all along, and which built their entire business model on the deception that's now been outlawed. Even more shocking, several major manufacturers are secretly accelerating plans to bypass dealerships entirely, using this crisis as cover to implement direct-to-consumer sales models they've been developing for years. Internal documents from 2 major automakers reveal plans to eliminate up to 40% of their dealer networks within the next 3 years. Plans they're carefully hiding from their current franchise partners. But perhaps most alarming is how this crisis exposes the true financial state of America's dealership system. After the pandemic markup boom years where dealers charged $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000 above MSRP, consumers haven't forgotten or forgiven. That simmering resentment created the perfect political environment for regulations that are now dismantling an entire sales model that's existed for nearly a century. How did a single consumer protection rule trigger an industry-wide meltdown? And which dealerships will survive this fundamental reshaping of America's auto retail landscape? To understand what's happening, we need to look beyond the showroom floor to the regulatory earthquake that changed everything overnight. This isn't speculation or exaggeration. It's based on dealer inventory data, bankruptcy filings, and insider information from industry executives watching their business model collapse in real time. Let's break down exactly what happened and why certain dealerships are facing extinction while others are thriving in this new transparency-driven market. The law that lit the fuse. In summer 2024, the Federal Trade Commission finalized what seemed like a straightforward consumer protection measure, the Combating Auto Retail Scams Rule, or CARS. This regulation fundamentally rewrote the rules for how vehicles can be sold in America, targeting practices that dealerships had relied on for decades. The transparency mandate. The CARS rule seemed simple on paper but proved revolutionary in practice. It required 3 critical changes to auto sales. First, dealers must advertise a true offering price that includes all mandatory fees and charges, the actual out-the-door cost a consumer would pay. No more advertising one price online, only to add thousands in dealer fees and documentation charges at signing. Second, it banned junk fees for services that added no value. Phantom VIN etching, nitrogen tire fills, paint protection packages that were often never even applied. These add-ons had silently padded dealer profits for decades. Third, it demanded express documented consent before any optional product or service could be added to a vehicle purchase. No more slipping extended warranties or maintenance packages into contracts without clear buyer approval. This rule wasn't just another regulation, it was an uninvited flashlight pointed into every corner of the showroom, explains auto industry analyst Maria Ramirez. It exposed decades of pricing practices that relied on confusion and information valuation asymmetry. For dealers who had built their entire business model around these practices, the impact was immediate and devastating. Front-end gross profits, the money made on the vehicle sale itself rather than financing or service, collapsed overnight at many dealerships. While dealer lobbyists warned the new compliance burden would hurt small operators, what they didn't say publicly was how many dealerships had become dependent on these hidden revenue streams just to keep their doors open. Without them, the entire economic model began unraveling. States turn up the heat. When a federal court temporarily vacated the CARS rule in late 2024, dealers briefly celebrated, only to discover the genie couldn't be put back in the bottle. State attorneys general across the country immediately stepped into the regulatory void, wielding existing consumer protection laws to pursue the exact same practices. The enforcement tsunami. The state-level crackdown proved even more damaging than federal regulation. Rhode Island's Attorney General secured a $1 million settlement from a dealership group for hidden fees. Arizona extracted $2.5 million in consumer restitution from another chain. Illinois went nuclear with a $20 million settlement from a network accused of widespread junk fee practices. These weren't isolated incidents, but part of a coordinated campaign. Politically ambitious attorneys general discovered that targeting dealership pricing practices was not just legally sound, but politically popular. Consumers who had felt gouged during the pandemic markup years had little sympathy for dealers now facing regulatory scrutiny. We went from one federal rule we could fight in court to 50 different state enforcement actions we can't possibly track or defend against, explains a dealership association executive who requested anonymity. It's like playing whack-a-mole with a legal hammer over your head. This patchwork enforcement created an even more precarious situation than the federal rule would have. Multi-state dealer groups now face different standards in each jurisdiction. While a single aggressive state prosecutor could make an example out of a dealership to send a message to the entire industry, the regulatory spotlight hadn't just shifted, it had intensified, leaving dealers exposed to unprecedented legal and financial risks just as market conditions were deteriorating. The markup boom years. The seeds of today's dealer crisis were planted during the pandemic and post-pandemic years. Unprecedented supply chain disruption created the perfect conditions for price gouging that would eventually trigger consumer backlash and regulatory intervention. The trust destruction. Between 2019 and 2022, the average new vehicle price in America surged by more than 30%. While supply shortages, material inflation, and labor costs contributed, economists identified dealership markups as a major driver of this increase. With demand far outstripping supply, dealers abandoned sticker prices entirely. Vehicles that once sold with modest discounts were suddenly commanding thousands above MSRP. Social media filled with stories of buyers paying $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000 over sticker for popular models, prices they felt forced to pay due to limited inventory and urgent transportation needs. Those were the boom years for dealers, notes automotive economist Sam Parker. Gross profit per vehicle doubled or tripled at many stores. The Bureau of Labor Statistics confirmed that dealership margins expanded significantly, making auto retail one of the quiet winners of pandemic-era economics. The financial windfall came at a steep cost: consumer trust. Even as inventory normalized and market conditions changed, public perception of dealerships remained deeply negative. Buyers who felt exploited during inventory shortages carried that resentment forward, creating the political will for regulatory intervention that might have faced stronger resistance in earlier years. This lingering distrust created the perfect environment for lawmakers and regulators seeking to justify a crackdown on dealership practices. The industry had, in effect, painted a target on its own back during the markup boom years, and now the consequences were coming due. Franchise shields shattered. For nearly a century, state franchise laws have protected dealerships from manufacturer control and direct competition. These regulations, originally framed as consumer protections, effectively guaranteed dealers territorial exclusivity and prevented automakers from selling directly to consumers. The system created a comfortable buffer between manufacturers and the public, with dealers controlling the crucial point of sale, the broken barricade. The transparency mandates have begun eroding this protection by forcing dealers to disclose their true selling prices up front and banning certain markup practices. When every potential buyer can instantly compare dealer pricing across cities or even states, the value of territorial exclusivity plummets. This isn't just about pricing purchasing power, explains automotive attorney Rachel Williams. It's about the entire balance of control in the auto market. If transparency becomes standard, the traditional franchise model loses much of its economic justification. The cracks are spreading beyond pricing. Manufacturers are exploring ways to exert more control over inventory allocation, marketing practices, and even the customer relationship, areas historically controlled by dealers. Some brands are now selectively enforcing facility standards or threatening to redirect inventory away from underperforming stores, leveraging the current crisis to reshape their dealer networks. For dealerships that invested millions in facilities and operations based on the franchise model's protections, this shift represents an existential threat. The protective walls haven't completely fallen, but they're showing serious structural damage, and dealers who once operated as protected local monopolies suddenly find themselves exposed to market forces they were never designed to withstand. Lots frozen in time. The most visible symptom of the dealer crisis can be seen on lots across America, where new vehicles sit unmoved for months or even years, a physical manifestation of a business model in collapse. The inventory paralysis. Visit certain dealerships today and you'll witness an almost surreal scene. Rows of identical vehicles parked in precise formation, gleaming under the sun but showing subtle signs of extended outdoor storage. Tires develop flat spots. Paint accumulates a fine layer of environmental contamination. Interiors still smell new, but dashboards show a thin film of dust. These aren't display models or special orders awaiting pickup. They're new cars trapped in inventory purgatory. A sedan delivered in early spring still occupies the same space months later, with autumn leaves caught in its wipers. Trucks that arrive during winter remain unmoved as summer heat bakes their interiors. We have certain models that haven't moved in over 400 days, admits a Stellantis dealer in Ohio who requested anonymity. We've cut prices to the bone, but customers simply aren't interested. They've moved on to other brands. The pattern isn't uniform. Certain dealerships, particularly those selling Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai models, maintain healthy inventory turnover, with vehicles selling almost as quickly as they arrive. But for others, particularly those tied to luxury European brands or struggling American nameplates, the lot has become a storage yard for unwanted product. The quiet lots tell a story that financial statements soon confirm. Time is the enemy, and every passing day without a sale deepens the strain on dealers caught in this inventory trap. Brands divided. The dealer crisis has exposed a stark division in consumer preference and brand health, with some manufacturers thriving in the new transparency environment while others face catastrophic rejection. The market verdict. A Toyota dealership pulsates with activity. Cars arriving on transport trucks are often pre-sold before they're prepped, with buyers waiting impatiently to take delivery. Similar energy surrounds Honda and Hyundai stores, where inventory turns quickly and salespeople focus on processing transactions rather than hunting for prospects. The contrast at certain luxury brand showrooms couldn't be more dramatic. The same vehicles occupy the same spaces week after week, with salespeople increasingly desperate to generate interest in aging inventory. A BMW i7 that arrived with fanfare now sits ignored in the corner of the lot, its once innovative features overshadowed by newer competitors, and its price increasingly disconnected from perceived value. This isn't just about production volume or availability, explains retail analyst Jennifer Chin. It's about trust and value perception. Brands like Toyota and Hyundai have cultivated reputations for delivering exactly what buyers expect at fair prices. That trust translates into rapid turnover even when overall market conditions deteriorate. Meanwhile, certain luxury brands have seen their appeal fade as consumers reassess the relationship between price and benefit. With transparent pricing forcing dealers to show their full hand up front, the psychological games that once made luxury purchases feel exclusive or special have less impact. Buyers can clearly see what they're paying for, and many are concluding it's not worth the premium. This divide is reshaping the dealer landscape, with some brands expanding their networks while others quietly plan for significant consolidation as underperforming stores become financially unsustainable. The cost of standing still. Behind the visible inventory buildup lies a financial mechanism that's turning slow-selling models into ticking time bombs on dealer balance sheets. Floor plan financing that transforms static inventory into mounting debt. The financial bleeding. Dealerships don't purchase vehicles outright with cash. They finance inventory through floor plan lending, a system where each car on the lot accrues interest until sold. In normal market conditions with healthy turnover, these carrying costs remain manageable. But when When inventory stagnates, they multiply with punishing speed. Having 400 days of inventory on a single model isn't just a sales problem, it's a financial catastrophe, explains dealer financial consultant Alex Morgan. At current floor plan rates, each $50,000 vehicle costs approximately $28 per day in interest. Multiply that by hundreds of unsold units sitting for months, and you're looking at interest expenses that can quickly exceed $1 million annually for a mid-sized store. This interest doesn't disappear. It erodes profit margins, strangles cash flow, and forces dealers to delay other investments just to keep current on floor plan payments. The problem compounds when multiple models experience similar sales challenges, creating a financial vortex that can quickly transform a previously profitable dealership into a distressed asset. For dealers caught in this trap, every aspect of operations suffers. Vendors wait longer to be paid, payroll becomes a heavier burden, facility improvements get deferred, marketing budgets shrink precisely when more promotion is needed. The dealership begins to show visible signs of financial strain that further discourage potential customers, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of decline. In this environment, even modestly profitable sales become critical for survival, but transparent pricing has made those transactions increasingly difficult to secure as consumers shop more aggressively across wider geographic areas. Discounts in desperation. The inventory crisis has created unprecedented buying opportunities for consumers willing to target the right brands and models, with price cuts that would have been unimaginable during the markup boom years. Fire sale reality. Dealerships desperate to convert aging inventory into cash are offering discounts that tell the true story of market conditions. Models that commanded thousands over MSRP just 2 years ago now sell for thousands under sticker, with dealers willing to accept razor-thin margins or even small losses just to move metal off their lots. Seeing certain luxury models selling $15,000 to $20,000 below MSRP, reports automotive pricing analyst Michael Torres. Dealers are pairing those markdowns with subsidized financing, extended terms, and generous trade allowances, anything to get a deal done and improve their cash position. This creates short-term opportunities for strategic buyers, but the underlying desperation is unmistakable. Sales managers who once made customers wait hours while they talked to the manager now volunteer their best price up front, hoping to prevent shoppers from comparing offers elsewhere. General managers approve deals they would have rejected without hesitation a year earlier, recognizing that another month of floor plan interest makes even a marginal sale preferable to continued holding costs. Dealers have resorted to even more extreme measures, moving vehicles through wholesale channels at substantial losses just to generate immediate cash flow and reduce floor plan obligations. These fire sale tactics represent a complete inversion of the market power dynamics that prevailed during inventory shortages, and signal just how dire the situation has become for dealerships caught with the wrong inventory mix. For consumers, the opportunity is real but potentially fleeting, as these distressed sales will eventually either stabilize the market or lead to dealership closures that reduce overall retail capacity. The old order wobbles. The dealership crisis represents more than just a cyclical downturn. It's potentially the beginning of the end for a franchise system that has dominated automotive retail for nearly a century. Structural collapse. For decades, state franchise laws created an impenetrable barrier protecting dealerships from direct competition and manufacturer control. These regulations dictated that automakers must sell independent dealers, ensuring local businesses maintained exclusive rights to defined territories and preventing factory direct sales that might undermine dealer pricing power. This system, largely invisible to most consumers, shaped every aspect of automotive commerce, from pricing and availability to service delivery and customer relationships. It created a stable but inefficient distribution network that added significant costs to vehicle purchases while limiting consumer options and price transparency. The franchise system wasn't designed for the digital age, explains automotive futurist Dr. Allison Ray. Built for an era when consumers had limited information and geographic mobility. Today's buyers have instant access to nationwide pricing data, online purchasing options, and transportation alternatives that make the territorial exclusivity model increasingly obsolete. Current regulatory push for transparency has accelerated this structural weakness, forcing dealers to compete not just locally but across entire regions as consumers compare prices online. Manufacturers, meanwhile, are exploring the limits of franchise protections, testing direct sales models for electric vehicles, subscription services, and online-only special editions. If these protective laws continue to erode through regulatory action or court challenges, the entire national sales model could be fundamentally reshaped. With fewer, larger dealership groups handling distribution, manufacturers exert more direct control over pricing, inventory, and the customer experience. The direct sales disruption. Tesla's revolutionary approach to vehicle sales, bypassing dealers entirely in favor of manufacturer-owned stores and online platforms, has moved from curiosity to proven model, creating a template that traditional automakers are increasingly eager to adopt. Manufacturer takeover. While franchise laws still protect traditional dealers in many states, manufacturers are watching Tesla's direct sales model with growing interest, particularly as dealerships struggle with transparency mandates and inventory challenges. Tesla's approach eliminates the middleman friction that's causing such problems for traditional dealers, notes industry strategist David Chen. For independent dealers, Tesla controls pricing nationally, adjusts inventory allocation instantly, and maintains direct customer relationships throughout the ownership cycle. This control has allowed Tesla to weather market fluctuations more effectively than competitors, matching supply to demand without the inventory backups now plaguing conventional dealerships. The direct model also enables immediate price adjustments across the entire market, a significant advantage when consumer preferences shift rapidly. Traditional automakers have taken notice. Ford has established separate dealer agreements for its electric vehicle lines with more restrictive terms that give the manufacturer greater control. General Motors has launched digital retail platforms that handle more of the purchase process before the customer reaches a physical dealership. Volkswagen is testing agency model sales in Europe that could eventually reach North America. These initiatives, once viewed as experimental, have accelerated as the dealer crisis deepens. Manufacturers increasingly see direct sales not just as a futuristic alternative, but as a necessary evolution that could insulate them from the volatility and inefficiency of the traditional franchise system. For dealers, this shift represents an existential threat far more serious than temporary inventory challenges or regulatory changes. It questions whether their business model has a long-term future in automotive retail at all. Cracks in the supply spine. The dealership crisis extends far beyond showroom floors, creating a cascading impact that threatens jobs, communities, and the broader economic ecosystem built around automotive retail. Widening impact. When dealerships struggle, employees feel the effects first and most directly. Sales staff face shrinking commissions as inventory stagnates. Service departments see reduced workflow when fewer new vehicles enter the ownership cycle. Administrative teams get cut as cost-saving measures intensify. What began as a sales problem quickly becomes an employment crisis, affecting thousands of workers nationwide. Typical mid-sized dealership employs 50 to 100 people directly, explains labor economist Dr. James Wilson. That represents just the visible portion of the employment impact. Each dealership job supports approximately 3.2 additional positions in the surrounding economy through indirect and induced effects. This multiplier means that dealership contractions affect local advertising agencies, parts suppliers, cleaning services, catering companies, and dozens of other businesses that rely on dealer spending. When a dealership closes completely, the economic shock can reverberate throughout an entire community, particularly in smaller markets where automotive retail represents a significant portion of the commercial tax base. The financial sector is also feeling the strain. Banks and specialty lenders that provide floor plan financing are reassessing their risk exposure as inventory ages and dealership financial metrics deteriorate. Some have begun tightening lending criteria or increasing interest rates for at-risk dealers, creating additional pressure precisely when flexibility is most needed. For manufacturers, the disruption threatens their primary distribution channel at a time when consumer preferences and regulatory requirements are already forcing expensive product transitions. A dealership network in financial distress has limited capacity to invest in facility upgrades, staff training, or marketing initiatives needed to support new model launches or electrification strategies. Politics in overdrive. The dealership crisis has transformed from a business challenge into a political battleground, with competing interests vying to shape the regulatory framework that will determine the future of automotive retail. Policy battlefield. In Washington and state capitals, the sight of dealership lots filled with unsold vehicles has become a potent symbol used by all sides to advance their agendas. Industry associations warn of widespread business closures and job losses if transparency regulations aren't modified. Consumer advocates point to the same troubled lots as evidence that the previous system was built on deception rather than value. Lobbying intensity around this issue has reached unprecedented levels, reports political analyst Sarah Johnson. Associations that were already powerful political forces have redoubled their efforts, while consumer groups and manufacturers are seizing the opportunity to reshape a system they've long criticized. This has created unusual political alignments that cross traditional partisan boundaries. Rural representatives, typically aligned with business interests, find themselves torn between supporting local dealerships and responding to constituent complaints about pricing practices. Urban lawmakers, generally sympathetic to consumer protection, must balance transparency goals against potential job losses in their districts. Labor unions representing dealership workers and auto manufacturing employees have also entered the debate, often advocating for transitional support programs that would protect jobs during industry restructuring. Their involvement adds another layer of complexity to policy discussions that might otherwise focus solely on business models and consumer protection. With midterm elections approaching, the dealership crisis has become increasingly politicized, with candidates using the issue to demonstrate their commitment to either small business preservation or consumer advocacy, depending on their constituent base. Political dimension further complicates efforts to find balanced solutions that might stabilize the industry while preserving meaningful transparency reforms. America's transparency tide. The automotive retail revolution reflects a broader transformation in American commerce as consumers increasingly demand transparency and direct access across all sectors of the economy. Middleman collapse. What's happening to dealerships mirrors similar disruptions in other industries where traditional intermediaries are being challenged by transparency, technology, and direct-to-consumer business models. Real estate agents face competition from digital platforms that give buyers direct access to listing information. Department stores struggle as manufacturers establish their own online storefronts. Healthcare providers confront patients armed with unprecedented information about treatment options and price. Dealership crisis is a case study in how quickly informational advantages can evaporate in today's economy, observes consumer behavior researcher Dr. Emily Zhang. For decades, car buying was characterized by information asymmetry. Dealers knew the true costs, profit margins, and inventory availability, while consumers operated in relative darkness. The transparency mandates have fundamentally reversed this dynamic, giving consumers access to pricing data, inventory levels, and competitive offers that were previously obscured. This shift doesn't just change how cars are sold, it transforms the entire relationship between dealers and customers, eliminating the negotiation leverage that historically drove dealership profits. As this transparency tide continues to rise across the economy, consumers increasingly view opaque pricing models as suspicious or predatory. Industries that resist the move toward openness find themselves facing not just market resistance, but potential regulatory intervention modeled on the auto retail reforms. Dealerships, this cultural shift means that even if specific regulations are modified or overturned, the fundamental consumer expectation of transparency is unlikely to reverse. The industry isn't just facing a temporary regulatory challenge, but a permanent recalibration of the retail environment that will require entirely new business models to navigate successfully. Wall Street on the hunt. The dealership crisis has created a target-rich environment for investors seeking to capitalize on distressed assets and industry consolidation, with significant implications for the future structure of automotive retail. Acquisition frenzy. As publicly traded dealership groups show diverging performance based on their brand mix and market positioning, investors are closely analyzing inventory turnover, floor plan exposure, and operational efficiency to identify acquisition targets and shorting opportunities. The financial stress affecting many dealerships has created ideal conditions for consolidation plays that would have been prohibitively expensive during the markup boom years. Private equity firms see tremendous opportunity in the current environment, reports financial analyst Rebecca Torres. Particularly interested in dealerships with valuable real estate and service operations but struggling new car departments. The strategy is to acquire these assets at distressed valuations, streamline operations, and create more digitally integrated retail chains that can thrive in the transparency era. Merger activity between mid-sized dealer groups has accelerated, driven by the need to achieve economies of scale and technology investment, inventory management, and manufacturer relations. By combining resources, these consolidated entities can better weather regulatory challenges while spreading fixed costs across a larger revenue base. Manufacturers are quietly encouraging this consolidation, preferring to work with fewer, better capitalized dealer partners rather than supporting numerous struggling individual stores. Some brands have begun revising their franchise agreements to facilitate ownership transfers and network rationalization, particularly in over-dealered markets where multiple stores compete for the same customer base. For Wall Street, the dealership crisis represents a classic disruption opportunity, a chance to reshape an inefficient, fragmented industry through financial engineering and operational consolidation. The resulting landscape will likely feature fewer but larger dealer groups operating more standardized, technology-intensive business models across multiple states and brands. Main Street in peril. Beyond the financial implications for investors and companies, the dealership crisis threatens the economic and social fabric of communities nationwide, particularly in smaller markets where automotive retail represents a significant employer and community pillar. The community impact. In many towns, the local dealership serves as more than just a place to buy cars. It's an economic anchor that provides stable employment, sponsors youth sports teams, supports charity events, and contributes to the tax base. When these businesses falter or close, the effects ripple throughout the community in ways that extend far beyond the immediate job losses. Each dealership job supports approximately 3.2 additional positions in the surrounding economy, explains economic impact researcher Dr. Thomas Richardson. When a dealership with 75 employees closes in a small town, the total impact can approach 250 jobs when you include indirect and induced effects. This multiplier effect touches virtually every sector of local economies. Parts suppliers lose orders. Advertising agencies lose clients. Restaurants near dealerships see fewer lunch customers. Commercial landlords face vacancies in surrounding properties as the economic ecosystem contracts. Even municipal services face pressure as commercial tax revenues decline. Labor unions representing dealership employees have raised particular concerns about the geographic distribution of these impacts. Unlike manufacturing job losses that tend to concentrate in specific regions, dealership contractions affect communities nationwide, often in areas with limited alternative employment options for displaced workers with specialized automotive skills. The social consequences extend beyond economics. In many communities, dealership owners and managers serve on local boards, support educational initiatives, and provide leadership for development projects. Their reduced capacity to fulfill these roles can weaken community institutions and philanthropy networks that depend on business sector engagement. For policymakers weighing regulatory approaches, these community impacts create difficult trade-offs between consumer protection goals and local economic stability, particularly in regions already facing economic challenges from broader manufacturing and retail disruptions. Buyer's crossroads. For consumers, the dealership crisis presents both unprecedented opportunities and potential long-term risks, creating a complex decision landscape for vehicle shoppers navigating this transitional market. The consumer calculation. In the short term, struggling dealerships offer extraordinary buying opportunities with discounts, incentives, and negotiation leverage that would have been unimaginable during the inventory shortage years. Vehicles selling thousands below MSRP, 0% financing, and generous trade-in allowances create conditions where strategic buyers can secure exceptional values. For ready buyers with secure financing, this is potentially a once-in-a-generation opportunity, advises consumer finance expert Maria Rodriguez. Models that commanded $5,000 to $10,000 over sticker just 2 years ago are now available at similar discounts below MSRP, particularly for brands with significant inventory backlogs. However, these immediate savings come with longer-term considerations that complicate the decision calculus. As dealerships close or consolidate, service access may become more limited, particularly for warranty-covered repairs that require manufacturer-certified technicians. Consumers in smaller markets may find themselves driving significantly longer distances for routine maintenance or facing longer wait times as remaining service departments handle increased volume. Resale value represents another uncertain variable. The current wave of discounted new vehicles could depress used car prices for years, leaving today's buyers with unexpected negative equity when they eventually sell or trade. This effect may be particularly pronounced for brands experiencing the most severe inventory challenges as their market perception and dealer support networks weaken. For consumers, navigating this landscape requires careful consideration of not just immediate purchase price, but long-term ownership costs, service accessibility, and potential resale implications. The transparency that triggered the dealer crisis has given buyers more information than ever to make these calculations, but also created more complex trade-offs between short-term savings and long-term ownership experience. Dealership lots across America have become frozen in time. Brand new cars sitting unsold for 400+ days, while interest charges pile up, profit margins vanish, and a fundamental reset of America's auto retail system accelerates. What began with a single consumer protection rule has cascaded into an industry-wide reckoning that threatens the very existence of the franchise dealer model. The Federal Trade Commission's CARS rule stripped away the pricing opacity that dealerships relied on for decades, forcing transparent disclosure of actual costs and eliminating hidden fees that once padded profit margins. When a federal court temporarily blocked the rule, state attorneys general stepped into the void, creating an even more challenging patchwork of enforcement that dealers couldn't navigate or defend against. This regulatory pressure hit an industry already vulnerable after the pandemic markup boom years, when dealers charged thousands over MSRP and destroyed consumer trust in the process. The public resentment from that period created political will for reforms that might otherwise have faced stronger resistance, leaving dealers exposed just as market conditions deteriorated. The crisis isn't affecting all dealerships equally. While Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai stores continue moving inventory at healthy rates, certain luxury brands and struggling American nameplates face catastrophic rejection. Their vehicles sitting unsold for months or even years, despite increasingly desperate discounting. For dealerships caught in this inventory trap, the financial bleeding is severe. Floor plan financing turns static inventory into mounting debt, with each unsold vehicle costing approximately $28 daily in interest alone. Multiply that by hundreds of units sitting for months, and even previously profitable stores face existential threats to their business model. This disruption extends far beyond showroom floors, threatening jobs, communities, and the broader economic ecosystem built around automotive retail. Each dealership closure affects not just direct employees, but parts suppliers, service providers, and local businesses that depend on dealer spending and employee income. Wall Street senses opportunity in the chaos, with private equity firms and larger dealer groups hunting for distressed assets they can acquire at bargain valuations. The likely result is accelerated consolidation, fewer but larger dealer groups operating more standardized, technology-intensive business models across multiple states and brands. For consumers, the immediate impact is unprecedented buying leverage, with discounts and incentives that create exceptional short-term values. However, these savings come with potential long-term considerations about service access, warranty support, and resale implications as the dealer network contracts and restructures. What we're witnessing isn't just a cyclical downturn, but a fundamental reshaping of how Americans buy cars, a transparency revolution that may ultimately eliminate the middleman model that has dominated automotive retail for nearly a century. The dealerships that survive will be those that embrace this new reality rather than fighting to preserve a system that consumers and regulators have clearly rejected. If you want the truth before the headlines spin it, subscribe now. Hit the bell so you're first to know when the next wave breaks. Share this with someone who needs to see what's really happening, because staying informed isn't just smart, it's survival in times like these.